The phone rings on a Sunday afternoon. You see the name on the screen before you answer, and you already know somehow what's coming. It's not an emergency. It never is. It's just another favor. Another small piece of your time, asked for so casually as if it costs nothing to give. You listen. You nod, even though no one can see you nodding. And then, for a moment, there's a pause. A pause that used to never exist in your life, because in the old days, the yes came before the question had even finished being asked. But this time, something is different. You take a breath, and you say, "I'm sorry, I can't." That's it. No excuse invented on the spot. No 5-minute apology dressed up as an explanation. No promise to make it up to them next time. Just 4 words, spoken gently, and then the quiet click of the phone being set back down. You stand there for a second, waiting for the guilt to arrive. It doesn't come. What comes instead is something you almost don't recognize anymore. Peace. When did saying one simple word become one of the hardest things a woman could ever do? And why does it become so much easier after 60? If you've ever felt that strange, quiet relief after finally saying no, or if you've spent your whole life saying yes and wondered what it might feel like to stop, stay with me for a little while. This one is for you. There was a time, for most of us, when no wasn't even a word we let ourselves think, let alone say out loud. We were taught so early and so thoroughly that a good woman is an accommodating one. A good daughter helps. A good wife supports. A good mother sacrifices. A good friend shows up every time, no matter what it costs her. Nobody sat us down and explained this directly. It was absorbed slowly, the way water soaks into soil, through the way our mothers ran themselves ragged and called it love, through the raised eyebrow we got as girls when we hesitated to share, through the quiet lesson that our own tiredness mattered less than someone else's convenience. So we grew into women who said yes before we'd even asked ourselves what we wanted. Yes to the school bake sale, even when we were exhausted. Yes to hosting the holiday, again, even though our own hands ached from doing it every year. Yes to lending money we couldn't really spare. Yes to listening to complaints that drained us dry. Yes to smoothing over other people's moods so the room could stay comfortable for everyone but us. We said yes at work, taking on the extra project because turning it down felt like admitting we couldn't handle everything. And handling everything was the whole performance, wasn't it? We said yes to committees at church, to carpools, to being the one who remembered every birthday and every anniversary and every small kindness that someone else forgot to return. And underneath all of that yes, there was a fear so old we stopped noticing it was there at all. The fear of being called selfish. The fear of disappointing the people we loved. The fear that if we ever put ourselves first, even once, the whole fragile structure of our relationships might come apart, that people might discover we weren't quite as endlessly giving as they'd assumed and love us a little less for it. So we explained ourselves. Constantly. Every no came wrapped in 3 apologies and a justification, as if our right to rest had to be earned through a convincing argument. We didn't just decline, we defended our right to decline, like we were standing trial for the crime of having limits. It's exhausting when you really sit with it. Decades of emotional labor that nobody ever thanked us for, because nobody even realized it was labor. It was just what we did. It was just who we were supposed to be. But something happens, slowly, as the years pass. And I want to tell you about a woman I'll call, well, I won't give her a name, because in a way, she could be any of us. She could be you. She spent 30 years raising children who are now grown and building lives of their own. She spent those same years managing a marriage, a household, a calendar so full of everyone else's needs that her own preferences became a kind of background noise she'd learned to ignore. She cared for her aging parents in their final years, waking at odd hours, rearranging her whole life around appointments and medications, and the quiet grief of watching people she loved grow smaller. And then, one ordinary Sunday, her daughter called to ask if she could take the grandchildren again this weekend. Not because there was an emergency, just because it was easier for everyone if Grandma said yes, the way Grandma always said yes. And for the first time, she felt something rise up in her that surprised her. Not resentment exactly, just tiredness. A tiredness that had been building for years, quietly, underneath every yes she'd ever given. She said, "Not this weekend, sweetheart. I need some time to myself. There was a pause on the other end of the line. A pause that once would have sent her scrambling to fill the silence with reasons and reassurances. But this time, she let the silence sit there. She didn't rush to soften it, and after a moment, her daughter simply said, "Okay, Mom, love you." That was it. The world did not end. Nobody stopped loving her. The sky did not fall in. There's another woman, a widow, who spent the first year after her husband passed terrified of being alone in the house. Every evening felt like a test she was failing. She filled her calendar with anything she could find. Dinners with acquaintances she didn't particularly enjoy, committee meetings she'd once have skipped without a second thought, phone calls that left her more drained than comforted. She thought if she just kept busy enough, the loneliness couldn't catch up to her. But somewhere in the second year, something shifted. She started noticing the difference between loneliness and solitude, how one was an ache and the other, surprisingly, could be a kind of company. She began declining the dinners that felt more like obligations than joy. She let herself sit by the window in the evenings with a cup of tea and nothing else. No television, no phone, just her own thoughts keeping her company. And what she discovered, to her own quiet astonishment, was that the silence didn't hurt the way she'd expected it to. It felt instead like coming home to herself after a very long trip away. And then there's a retired teacher, 40 years in the classroom, 40 years of committee meetings and parent conferences and grading papers late into the night, 40 years of being needed by everyone around her every single day. When she finally retired, she assumed the requests would slow down. They didn't. Her old colleagues asked her to volunteer for the school's fundraising committee. Her church asked her to help organize the annual bazaar, the way she always had. Her neighbors assumed she'd have time now to walk their dogs, water their plants, watch their houses while they traveled. For the first few months, she said yes to almost everything, because saying yes was the only way she knew how to exist in the world. But one Tuesday morning, she woke up and made herself a pot of coffee and sat on her porch and watched the light move slowly across her garden. And she thought, I don't want to go to another meeting today. I just want this quiet morning, this cup of coffee, this unclaimed hour that belongs to no one but me. So she skipped the committee meeting. She didn't call anyone to explain. She simply didn't go. And when someone asked her about it later, she said only, I had other plans, and left it at that, even though her other plans were nothing more than her own porch and her own thoughts and her own permission to simply be. Why does it take so long for us to get here? Why does it take 60 years, sometimes, before we let ourselves say a sentence as simple as, that doesn't work for me, without immediately drowning it in justification? I think part of it is that guilt becomes automatic, long before we ever examine where it came from. We're taught as girls that our worth is measured by how much we give, how much we absorb, how much of ourselves we're willing to set aside for the comfort of others. And once that lesson takes root, it doesn't need reinforcing anymore. It runs on its own, quietly in the background of every decision we make. We apologize when we've done nothing wrong. We explain ourselves when no explanation was ever required. We shrink our own needs down to a size that feels safe to express, and even then, we wrap them in so much cushioning that sometimes the actual need gets lost entirely. But here's something worth sitting with, gently, for a moment. A boundary is not an act of unkindness. A boundary is an act of honesty. When you say no clearly, without a long list of justifications, you are not rejecting the person who asked. You are simply telling the truth about your own capacity. And there is a kind of respect in that honesty that a guilt-soaked yes could never offer. Think about it from the other side for a moment. When someone tells you a clear, calm no, don't you usually respect it more than a reluctant yes dragged out of obligation? Don't you sense, somehow, when someone has said yes only because they felt they had no choice? That kind of yes rarely feels like a gift. It feels like a debt being paid. Saying no, when it comes from a place of self-respect rather than anger, protects something precious. Your peace, your energy, the parts of yourself that have quietly waited decades for permission to matter. If these conversations remind you that your best years are still ahead of you, I'd love for you to subscribe to Her Golden Chapter. Every week, we share thoughtful conversations about confidence, peace, and embracing life after 60. Conversations meant to feel less like advice and more like sitting with a friend who understands exactly what you've been carrying. There is a particular kind of freedom that comes with finally allowing yourself to disappoint people. I don't mean disappointing them cruelly or carelessly or without love. I mean the freedom of accepting that you cannot manage everyone's expectations and also live your own life. That these two things were never actually possible to hold at once, no matter how many decades you spent trying. For so long, so many of us carried an invisible spreadsheet in our minds, tracking who we'd let down, who we still owed, who might think less of us if we didn't show up exactly the way they expected. It's a heavy thing to carry, that spreadsheet. It follows you into rooms you didn't even want to be in. It keeps you up at night rehearsing conversations that haven't happened yet, defending decisions nobody has actually challenged. And then, one day, sometimes gradually, sometimes all at once, you simply put it down. Not because you stopped caring about the people in your life, but because you finally understood that their comfort was never supposed to be your full-time job. The relief of that is hard to describe until you've felt it. It's the relief of walking into a room and not immediately scanning for who might need something from you. It's the relief of leaving a gathering early because you're tired without composing an explanation in your head on the drive over. It's the relief of choosing yourself quietly without announcement and discovering that the world continues turning exactly as it did before. And here's something worth noticing. Something that surprises almost everyone who finally gets here. The people who truly love you don't disappear when you set a boundary. They adjust. They might be surprised at first, a little unsettled even, because they'd grown so used to your endless yes that your no catches them off guard. But love that's real doesn't require your exhaustion as proof. The people who matter will find their way to respecting the new shape of you, and often they'll respect you more for it, not less. Something about a clear, calm boundary tends to earn a kind of respect that endless accommodation never could. The people who only valued you for what you could do for them, well, they may drift. And as painful as that can feel at first, it's its own kind of gift. Because it shows you, gently and honestly, who was actually there for you all along. The greatest gift age gives us isn't more time. We know by 60 that time is not something we get more of. If anything, we've become more aware than ever of how precious and finite it is. No, the real gift is permission. Permission to rest without earning it first. Permission to leave a gathering early because your body is asking you to. Permission to decline an invitation without inventing a reason that sounds important enough to justify your absence. Permission to change your mind, even after you've already said yes, because you are allowed to reconsider what you have the capacity for. Permission to protect the quiet, ordinary peace of an afternoon that belongs to no one but you. Permission, finally, to say no, without explaining it into something smaller, without apologizing for having limits, without needing anyone else's approval to know that your own peace is reason enough. It took most of us decades to arrive here. Decades of yes after yes after yes, decades of managing everyone's feelings but our own, decades of believing that our worth was measured by how much we were willing to give away. And somewhere in all those years, quietly, we were also learning, even when it didn't feel like learning, that peace is worth more than approval. That the people who love us don't need us to be endlessly available in order to keep loving us. That we were allowed all along to simply exist without constantly proving we deserve to. Let's go back to where we started. She sets the phone down after the call. The kitchen is quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel uncomfortable to her, back when she filled every silence with obligation. She fills the kettle and puts it on the stove. And while she waits for the water to warm, she doesn't think about the favor she just declined. She doesn't rehearse what she might say if they call back. She doesn't wonder if she was too harsh, too short, too selfish. She simply waits for her tea. When it's ready, she carries the cup to the chair by the window, the one with the late afternoon light pooling softly across the cushion, and she sits. The house holds its quiet around her, patient and undemanding. And for the first time in longer than she can remember, She notices something she wasn't expecting to feel. She isn't feeling guilty. She's simply feeling peaceful. Sometimes the most powerful sentence you'll ever say isn't long at all. It's simply no. No. And perhaps the greatest gift of turning 60 is finally believing that one word is enough. Until next time, keep embracing your golden chapter.